My name is Brian Rice. I'm a third-generation wine grower, and I've been making wine for over 2 decades here in Santa Barbara wine country. It's more than a job. It's a calling. Join me as I talk to my fellow winemakers in a series that is a candid conversation between winemakers discussing their wines, their craft, and their lives over 2 glasses of wine. My name is Brian Rice, and welcome to 2 Glasses In. I'm sitting here with a friend and winemaker extraordinaire, Mr. Blair Fox of Fox Cellars Wines. And I'm privileged to have known you since 1999, 2000. But first, tell us about your past and how you ended up falling in love with wine and going to UC Davis and eventually getting to Santa Barbara.
Born and raised in Santa Barbara, and went up to Davis, and I was pre-med, kind of exploratory biology at the time, and so taking all that chemistry, OChem, biochem, genetics, math, calculus, all that crazy stuff. And then I stumbled into my first viticulture class and just fell in love with the grape growing side of it. And from the grape growing side of it, which is viticulture, I figured, you know what, I was kind of one of the guys that raised my hand, who's gonna be a grape grower? Because I love being outside, I love that whole side of it. But then I thought, I could grow these amazing grapes and hand them off to somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing. So I should probably take all the enology coursework too. And so I was the first year to graduate with a combined degree in both viticulture and enology. And that was back in '99. I helped Fess Parker for the vintage, and I was very textbook back then, it was very just like, this is how you're supposed to do things.
So it was how you were taught at Davis.
Exactly.
And you used all their formulas and protocols.
Right, yeah. I don't look at a textbook for anything anymore. It's about being in the vineyard and tasting the grapes and being in the winery and smelling, the fermentations and the aromatics and tasting the fermentations and just having that complete understanding of the whole process. I always wanted to go back to Santa Barbara County. I never wanted to be anywhere else. I never had that lure to Napa or any other place in the world. Yeah, coming back home and then really taking over the reins at Fess Parker, and I've been there now for 16 years.
Fess Parker and Marcy were close friends with my parents. We found ourselves here in Santa Barbara mostly because of the Parkers. They had invited us to come up here and really plant vineyards. We'd been friends for many generations, and so we thought we would be selling grapes to the Parkers at some point.
Yeah.
But then we fell in love with winemaking and got the bug, and the next thing you know, we're making wine. And... All right, Blair, let's open some wine.
Sounds good.
What do we have here?
Here's Ambush. So this is a 2015 Ambush. This is all from our estate in Los Olivos. Mm-hmm. And so it's all the red varieties that we grow. So we have Grenache, we have Syrah, we have Petite Syrah, and a little bit of Zinfandel out there.
Oh wow, Zin.
Yeah.
That's really rare in Santa Barbara, right?
So this is just around 50% Grenache, and then the rest come in at Syrah, Petite Syrah, Zinfandel.
Oh wow.
Zinfandel being the least.
So you'd call this like a classic California style red blend, right?
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
The Ambush, why the Ambush?
Well, Syrah came up with that. So Sarah's my wife, as you well know, and we had this artwork, which Mark, our tasting room sales associate, he did the artwork on this for this label. And it's a fox, and we're just trying to figure out what that fox was about to do. So I proposed the attack, but that came off a little bit too hardcore, I guess, in Sarah's eyes, and so she said ambush. So it's cool because on the back then we put a description of ambush, the definition, and it says a complex, secretly constructed multi-phase operation planned in great detail and contains the element of total surprise.
That sounds like a winery. It smells amazing. Can you describe for people what you're getting?
Yes, I think at first you get some of the Grenache, like that Bing cherry and that really kind of ripe red fruit. And then Syrah kind of comes into play and adds a little bit of black fruit, some plum. Petite Syrah really adds structure and kind of length and tannin. And then Zinfandel just gives it like a playful, just kind of fruitiness, which Zinfandel kind of adds. So it's cool. And what I do is I basically cherry pick the absolute top barrels from all of the different lots, and then sit around and tinker with a blend. And sometimes it'll take me 20 minutes to figure it out, and sometimes it'll take me 3 days to figure it out. And you know how blending goes. So blending is kind of where the winemaker really has that opportunity to make something that they feel is unique, I think. And I think that's what this wine is for our estate.
What's the residual sugar on this?
It's totally dry.
Yeah. It has a perceivable sweetness to it. I would imagine the Zin does that. I know
Zin
it does.
probably has a little bit of, and so it's totally dry. It's aged in barrel for 22 months, 100% French oak.
How many cases do you make of this ambush?
It's about 100.
So
very
small. People don't know, when you handcraft a wine that's only 100 cases, that's a commitment to capturing, a really unique flavor profile. It's not necessarily something that's going to go broad market and be in stores around the country. It's like, this is something that I'm putting my heart and soul into.
For sure.
And you're only selling it, I imagine, in your tasting room.
Correct.
Yeah. What would you match this with? It's really powerful. Sometimes I feel like really powerful wines can overpower, if you will, the food, but some dishes can stand up to it.
Yeah,
what would you pair with this?
I think most game meats obviously will work well with this. I think lamb, even things like elk. I think you can definitely put a nice big ribeye in front of this wine for sure, and it'll definitely pair very nicely.
Man, you're making me hungry. So tell me about the Fess Parker Winery. Tell me about the differences between your winemaking there versus, say, the winemaking you do for your own wines.
I think, really it's vineyard sourcing, and it's just economy, like we were saying, scale. My wines are just tiny, ultra small. They're all hand punch downs. It's usually myself or my kids or my wife helping me with pigeage or punch downs or whatever needs to happen in the winery. So mine is very much more estate, or I have 6 different vineyards that I use for Blair Fox Cellars that are all Syrah.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to Fess Parker Winery and your own, I understand you also make Epiphany Winery, which I love the name of it. Epiphany's a great name for a winery. Tell me about that. What are the differences between Epiphany and Fess Parker?
Yeah, so the Epiphany name actually came from Eli when he was in Australia and he was tasting GSM, and he was like, we could do this in Santa Barbara County. And so that was his epiphany, and that's when he actually came up with the name and came up with a brand, and it was something for him to kind of step away out from under, the umbrella of Fess Parker and start his own Rhone-based type of winery. And then I kind of started taking over the winemaking at Epiphany in 2005. Mm-hmm. And it's a very much a Rhone-based program. We have Roussanne and Marsanne and some Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, Counoise, and so keeping it all different makes it much more interesting for me. Cool, so this is my 2016 Tierra Alta Vineyard Syrah. And I've been working with Tierra Alta since 2004. This is another kind of favorite in the tasting room, typically it's got great dark fruit characters, mm-hmm. but then it'll also have chocolate and pepper. And this is out in Ballard Canyon. Ballard Canyon, is such a great growing region for Syrah, especially, and that's really what they're hanging their hat on out there. Mm-hmm. I make 3 different Syrahs from 3 different vineyards in Ballard Canyon.
And Blair, people know you for Rhones, right? That's really your true passion, would you say? Would you say Syrah is your kind of noble grape?
I would say so. I got out of UC Davis, and that was my final wine marketing class. It was that Syrah was going to be the next red grape to take over Cabernet Sauvignon in popularity. I'm still waiting for that to happen, but we'll see. We'll see if it ever happens. But I just love Syrah. I think it's a great wine. With food, it's a great wine on its own. Where it's grown, you see so many differences, whether it's cool climate characters like super peppery and floral, mm-hmm. or then warmer, climate characteristics where it's more like fruit, big ripe mm-hmm. fruit, jammy fruit. Mm-hmm. So in all these areas that I work with, they're all very cool climate. So it's kind of right in between. I work with some out of Santa Rita Hills, which is super cool. And again, you get that real floral, peppery side. And then Ballard Canyon, I think it's a good kind of right in the middle where you get the pepper, but you still get, chocolate, and dark fruit, and plum, and things like that.
Oh, the spiciness on this Syrah is incredible. What's the retail price on this?
This one's $47.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which for most people, that's really out there. That's a really high price, but what they don't realize is that it's such a small production that it's really scarce, and you only have it available in your tasting room.
Right.
And I think people don't really realize the economies of scale in the wine business. They don't realize when you only make a few hundred cases of something, your cost of making only that amount is really, really high compared to doing thousands of cases.
And super high quality grapes too, so the grape cost is really how I base my pricing usually. And like I said, this vineyard I've been making since 2004, and it just keeps performing well, and as it gets older, it keeps kind of showing different nuance. And yeah, I think, when you really look at it, I made just under 100 cases of this wine, and when you look at that production and you look at the scores that I've received with this wine, I think frankly, $47 is probably too low.
Yeah.
I should really be charging more, but I do want it to be kind of a bargain. I don't want to price it outside of everybody's budget.
Would you say that it's true kind of across the board for Santa Barbara County that our prices are more in line with reality?
For sure. I think Syrahs and, our high-end red wines from Santa Barbara County that can compete with the best wines in California. They compete with Napa Cab and Napa Syrahs and all these wines that are priced way, triple, quadruple, 5 times as much as the wines for similar quality. You can get a 96-point wine from one critic that's in Santa Barbara County between 30 and 50, and then you go up to Northern California and Napa, that same kind of caliber of wine is going to be 100 to 200, if not more.
Right. I've seen it. It's incredible what they can charge. On that note, I'm going to pour some more of this delicious wine. And I know you make many other different wines with Syrah. What would you say, if you had to choose one, is your default take home for dinner?
I make, from our estate vineyard, I make a Syrah, which is just something super special. I found this site. We planted it in 2006. I was there for every day of everything in terms of, kind of vineyard maintenance and vineyard operation and everything that happens there, vineyard establishment. I chose which varieties to plant where, how much compost, how much gypsum, all this stuff that we're adding. And it's a fun wine. I just, like we've been talking about, I'm a Syrah guy. I really started to love Pinot Noir after working for Fess Parker because I hadn't had a lot of Pinot Noir that I liked before that, and then really understanding that grape has made me a Pinot fan, but still I think Syrah is kind of where I hang my hat.
Well, you may have just stumbled upon Pinot Noir, but you've been highly awarded with 90+ scoring wines with Pinot Noir, and you've been considered to be winemaker of the year a few times. So obviously the variety isn't really a factor. You're just an all-around good winemaker.
Well, thank you. It's luckily I lucked out, and it makes great wine too. Experience, and understanding your vineyard. More than anything else, I feel like wine is made in the vineyard. I'm just trying not to screw it up. But on the same token, I do try to put a thumbprint on the wines I make. I think we have a handle on it, but it still isn't easy.
Yeah, and now you're the textbook that you used to read. If you were to go back to UC Davis now, what would you tell the students and advise them as far as the wine industry is concerned?
I would say if you're truly passionate about it and you want it, go for it. Start at the bottom and you need to work your way up just like everybody else. Brian I think you had interviewed him, and he offered me a job back in the day, like right out of Davis. Brian Babcock. And it was for $8 an hour, and I was like, I need to make a little bit more money than that.
But he offered to pay you in wine as well, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. No, but he's actually had amazing people come out of his cellar that have started their own labels and moved on, and he's really had kind of a university of Brian Babcock over there, where I think they get well trained and accomplished, and then they move on and start their own wineries, which is cool.
So it sounds to me like the formula that you might recommend to students is to have grit and to focus on their passion and not worry about anything else, because if they really love it, they will be successful. Right?
Yeah, you got to stick it out.
Well, I'll tell you what, Blair, this has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with me and share these 2 glasses of wine, and I'm looking forward to many more.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.